everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you the top 10 books that I read in 2023. So this is just my opinion. This is from all the books that I read in 2023, and it's my top 10. I actually have 2 honorable mentions, so we're going to start with those first. So the first honorable mention, it is none other than Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is just, I couldn't even describe it. It had everything. It had a little bit of like love interest, it had scheming, it had magic, and phenomenal characters, phenomenal world, and I just enjoyed the entire time I read this. This is Brandon Sanderson's first ever published work, so I'm super excited that I finally got to read it in 2023, and it did not disappoint. The next honorable mention was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is R.F. Kuang's debut in contemporary fiction. So normally R.F. Kuang has written some fantasy novels or historical fantasy novels. So this one was her first stab into regular fiction, and I have to tell you, she did a great job. R.F. Kuang is just a phenomenal writer, and she depicts the publishing industry so well in this, like, in my opinion of what I know about the publishing industry, and just the character in this, the main character, she's despicable. Like, not despicable in a way of like evil by any means, but just really morally gray and thinking that she's in the right when she's not. But like, you feel for her though. That's what's really funny. You feel for her. This was just a wild ride to read. It didn't take me very long. I mean, it is short, but it was great. So definitely, it didn't make my top 10, but I had to talk about it because it was just, it had to be an honorable mention for sure. Now, getting into my top 10 books that I read in 2023. Some of these are new, some of these are not. And the first one that I want to talk about is a really old book, but it is a classic, and the last time I read this before I read it this year was 8th grade. So it's been years since I've read this book, and it still holds top place in my heart. And that is none other than The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This story is just, it's a classic adventure tale in a fantasy setting, and I love it. It's got everything in it. J.R.R. Tolkien is just a master. I can't really say anything other than that. His world building, his pacing, his characters, they're just great. So I plan to prioritize, it's not on my priority list, but it's next in line for the Lord of the Rings series for 2024. I'm hoping I can get to that. What's funny is I've never read those. I've watched the movies, never read the actual books. I tried, but I think the version I borrowed was like Old English or something, and I couldn't get through it. So hopefully the versions that I have now are not that. But yeah, this is just a classic fantasy tale. And I loved it. I had to put it in my top 10. Next one is another older one, and I finally got to it. I'm still not done with the series yet. I'm going to finish that probably early in 2024. But it is the Demon King in the Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams China. I'm going to put both the first and the second book in this little slot here because I love this. This was so great. I love Ryza and Han and just how everything is like starting to connect. But Cinda Williams China does a phenomenal job with her characters, her world building, the plotting and the scheming and the twists and the turns, and I can't get enough. And so I have to read the third one yet. I have prioritized some other books before her, but it is definitely going to be one that I pick up soon. I want to finish this series. I mean, this is definitely a new favorite. The next book in my top 10, which I'm going to say is number 7. They're not really in any particular order. So, I mean, there is a definite number 1 winner, but I'm sure when I hold that one up, you'll know. But the next book is the series again. The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I love this book. It's a fantasy romance, but it's not just strictly romance heavy. It's got a plot. It's got a backstory. It's got everything to it, not just the romance. And really the first one, you get romance in it a little bit. You get that angst, you get that pull, but it really doesn't hit heavy on the romance until the second book, because this is a duology. But in this first one, basically there is a tournament, and this girl, what's her name? Aurea. She is a human who lives in a world of vampires. Well, the king of the vampires, he found her as a young child and took her in and became that father figure to her or whatever. But he's only taught her that she lives in a world of basically predators who are going to try to kill her any chance they have because she's human. So she enters into this tournament, and it is, if she wins, she gets one wish. So basically her wish is to be all powerful. I forget exactly the term, but she's gonna like combine herself to her father and have all that power, so that way she no longer will be afraid. But then she meets Rain, and then it all, goes from there. But yeah, if you haven't picked this up yet, I really suggest it, especially if you like romance, but you're not super big into the romance side of it. This is not super heavy romance. So I thought it was really interesting that they're calling it a fantasy romance. I can see why in the second book, but the romance isn't the prime plot point in this. So I definitely suggest picking this up, whether you're huge in romance or not. This was a great read. And Broadbent just wrote it fantastic. The next book I'm going to talk about is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I read this at the beginning of 2023, and oh my gosh, this was my first introduction to Brandon Sanderson or these books, and I'm so glad that I read these. I mean, they're brilliant. They're great. I love his fantasy worlds. I just do. And this is part of the Cosmere, which that's a big part of my 2024 that you'll get to see. But I mean, I love it. And he comes up with such unique magic systems across everything. So like Elantris had a different magic system. This has a different magic system. All the different planets, but then they all like come together at some point. I don't know, there's little Easter eggs and everything. And this one, not so much, but it's intertwined and you'll be able to pick up on stuff. I heard from like later on as you continue to read, but this is just, I can't even, it's gonna be one of my favorite series of all time. It's phenomenal. I can't praise it enough. So if you haven't stepped into Brandon Sanderson yet, pick up his Mistborn series first, because it's great and you will definitely fall in love with it, and you'll want to read anything and everything by Brandon Sanderson. The next book, I'm actually going to be talking about 2 more Brandon Sanderson books, but it's from his Year of Sanderson, and I just have to, I mean, it's so good. And part of the reason why it was one of my favorites is just the artwork, and the book itself is phenomenal. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This one it's a part of the Cosmere, but it's set on a completely different planet, and you know, they've got seas like other places, but except they're full of spores, different spores, and the spores do different things. But basically this is like a Princess Bride retelling. So you have Tess, who is in love with the Duke's son. Well, the Duke takes his son across the spores, wanting him to get married. Well, he keeps sending cups back to Tess. Well, one day she didn't get a cup. So she's like, oh, he forgot about me or whatever, but there's this feeling that something is wrong, because the Duke comes back, no son. So Tess goes on this adventure to try and save the love of her life, and she grows from there. It's so great. And she's got a little rat companion. I love it. And there's humor, and the narrating is great. So if you haven't picked it up, please do. It's a super cozy read, and I fell in love with it. It is great. Next one is also a Brandon Sanderson. I'm just gonna get him out of the way. But it is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And this one, by far, best artwork. This is a romance from Yumi and about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. But it's a super sweet romance. They're from 2 different worlds, and you see that they're trying to understand. Painter's trying to teach Yumi to paint. She's trying to teach Painter what she has to do for her duty in her world, and stacking rocks and how artsy that is. But it's just, I love it. And again, the narrating was on point. It's got the this has got the connections more so than tested for the Cosmere. And I didn't really understand the connections until I read Elantris, because Elantris helped me understand a little bit more about the Cosmere. The more I read, the more I will understand. So, but yeah, just please pick these up. These are so good. And I mean, even if you don't buy the special edition hardcover. Really what I would suggest is so that way you could get the artwork. Granted, I don't know if the normal hardback and the paperback that Tor is publishing for Brandon is gonna have the artwork, but if you go on dragonsteel.com, you can buy the ebooks and it has all the artwork in it. Like, I would suggest you do that so you can be a part of the artwork. I mean, I wanted these on my shelf, but to each their own. The next book is it's the first Emily Henry book that I read, and it is Book Lovers. I absolutely love this, partly because it's about books. Both these people work in the publishing industry. One's an editor, one is an agent who wants to be an editor, and the editor, excuse me, I can't talk. The editor, he's very broody, and then she's very, like, you know, strong. She's a strong, independent woman, and he's, you know, a broody man, basically. She can't understand why she, like, can't hold down a man. I don't remember if he had a girlfriend or something like that or whatever, but they end up being in the same place. She goes on vacation with her sister. He's actually from that town. So they spend time together. And then it, you know, blossoms from there because this is a romance. Emily Henry is a romance novelist. She writes characters so well. Because I've read another one of her books in 2023, and she makes you, like, see through the eyes of her characters, and I loved it. I love it. And granted, you don't get the guy's perspective, only the girls, at least in the 2 books that I've read. But I think it's great. I love it. So I plan to read more Emily Henry in 2024. At least 2 more books of hers or whatever. But so good. So if you like books and you want to read about people who love books and that fall in love, pick this up because it's good. The next book I have to read, and it's no shocker that it made the top 10 of 2023, is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This one I fell in love with. It had everything. I'm a huge fan of ACOTAR, and this just brought that back for me. I couldn't put it down. I love Xaden, I love Violet, and I want to be a part of their adventure more, and I love the dragons, and I've heard that there's some twists and turns in the second one, so I will be picking that one up here soon too. But oh my gosh, I love this. It's been killing me not picking up the second one because it came out in November. But I don't know when the third one's coming out, and I don't know. I'll probably just have to read them again, to be quite fair. But yeah, I know there's people who either love this book or hates this book. There's not an in-between. I'm the person that loves this book. So yeah, that's all I have to say. The next book, and it's probably no surprise because she is one of my favorite authors of all time, and she just pulls you in and gets your hopes up and then rips your heart out, and she did it again in this one, but it all had a happy ending, so thank goodness, because if it didn't, I was probably gonna write a letter and be like, why would you do this? But that is the final book in the Last Hours trilogy, Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This is one of the chunkiest books I read in 2023. It's 778 pages. I mean, it's a thick one, but it's so good. I think it could have been a little shorter, to be quite fair, but at the same time, I would have been fine if it was 1,000 pages, because I love this world and I want to be in it and I want to be with the characters and I want them all to be happy. And I love James and Cordelia and I love Matthew and you get a little bit of Will and Tessa and Jem. So like, it almost made me cry. Usually her books do, because she rips me apart, but she didn't make me cry in this one. I did get some feels. Good, bad, sad, happy, everything. But I didn't cry. And I'm very upset that I didn't cry. But I'm crying on the inside, because she's only got one more trilogy in the Shadowhunter world, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So, but yeah, I loved this book. I love Cassandra Clare. I love the Shadowhunters. There's no one out there that's going to tell me that they're trash, because they're not. And the last book, and I had to save it for last just partly because the cover is gorgeous. And I got a sprayed edge edition as well, because it's just phenomenal. And this is a UK book. So it came out in the UK way before it came out in the United States. But I bought it off of a UK website, so that's part of the reason why I got it early. And I did that with the second one, and that's coming out, I think, early 2024. So I already pre-ordered it. Super excited. But that is God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I loved this. It's super short, but she hits everything. You don't feel like it's rushed. You don't feel like she's missing anything. It is like perfectly edited, in my opinion. So this is basically about a girl who's a god killer, and she's got a past or whatever, so she hates gods. But a little noble girl finds her and asks for her help because she is attached to a god. And reluctantly, she, goes on this quest to this ancient city of the gods to help this little noble girl out. Because really, the girl and the god can't be too far apart from each other. If not, like, they both pass out. They're not sure if they'll die or whatever if they're too far apart from each other. So she helps out and she takes this girl. Well, on the way, they meet this knight. And he's got his own backstory or whatever, but he kind of comes into the fold a little bit. And it's kind of like a found family. A lot of people have said that this reminds them of Geralt and Ciri's relationship from The Witcher. Just if you wanted more of Geralt and Ciri's relationship in The Witcher and you didn't get that, this gives you more of that, is basically what it is. I have not read The Witcher. I've watched the Netflix series of The Witcher, and I love that. But I could see where they get that from. So, yes, this one, I don't know. I can't put a number on it in the top 10 just because I loved all of these books so much. And this one I love too, partly because, there's the sprayed edge. It's gorgeous. I love this book. and I cannot wait for the second one to come out. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 reads of 2023 with 2 honorable mentions. I'm sure I could have had more, but I limited myself to 2. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what some of your top reads of 2023 were. I would be happy to know and happy to just talk about them. So don't forget, like and subscribe and be good people.
When you feel it's hopeless, when you think that you lost, oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh,